Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is Lena's Bookshelf. I, of course, am Lena, and today we are going to talk about my fairly ambitious August TBR. So I'm setting a couple of goals for myself for the rest of the year. So there's a couple of genres that have been sitting on my shelves for quite a bit of time now, and I've been neglecting them for new release thrillers that have come out because I love thrillers, and as soon as a new one comes out, I want to get into the hype and I want to talk about them with people, but that leaves some things on my shelf a little bit neglected. So we're going to talk about that. I have mostly physical books that I want to read this month because I really need to keep working on that number of physical books on my shelf, but then I also have a couple of NetGalley arcs that I want to make sure that I read this month. So we're going to talk about them. I have the iced coconut Nespresso pod that I've made iced coffee with today. Oh, I love it. If I just had this pod for iced coffee for the rest of my life, I would be fine. Okay, so first let's talk about my personal challenges that I'm giving myself. So first off, I want to read one of my Stephen King books every month for the rest of the year. So I have enough to get me well into next year, but I am just going to challenge myself through the end of this year. So every month for the rest of 2022, I'm going to try to read one Stephen King book. So I'm reading one currently, and then the one I want to read in August is Thinner. And one of my coworkers actually recommended this to me. He said it is about a man who gets cursed by a witch, and his curse is that for the rest of his life, he's gonna get thinner and thinner and thinner. No matter what he does, no matter how much he eats, how much he works out, he's just gonna keep getting thinner. And he said it was pretty creepy, but he said it was also pretty interesting. And I believe it's also been made into a movie. So yeah, and this is one of the titles that Stephen King wrote as Richard Bachman. And I've really enjoyed the Richard Bachman titles that I've read so far. So I'm excited for this one this month. And then the next personal challenge that I'm giving myself is to read one of my Chuck Palahniuk books every month. So I really enjoy Chuck Palahniuk. If you don't know him, he's the one that wrote Fight Club. That's the most popular title that he's written because it is a pretty successful movie. But this one is Stranger Than Fiction, and I'm kind of afraid to read the synopsis because it seems very interesting. I see Marilyn Manson, I see the word rocket ships, I see the word white supremacist. So I think a lot of this is short stories, some about Chuck's life and some about some other writers' lives. And I know that Chuck Palahniuk's father was a white supremacist, and I think there was a lot of abuse in his past. So I don't know, we'll see. Chuck Palahniuk is pretty hit or miss for me. I either love his books or I just really don't understand them. So we'll see. So next I want to make sure I'm reading some of my kind of nonfiction, self-help, kind of science-y, psychology-related books. So for this month, I'm going to read Born for Love, and this is by Dr. Bruce Perry and my, I'm not sure how to say that name. And so this will be the third or fourth book that I've read by Dr. Bruce Perry, and it's a lot about empathy. So it's about how empathy is endangered, and we're born with it to an extent, but it also is a learned behavior. I never read Dr. Perry and feel stupid. Like, he does a really good job at explaining things and making you really understand them, but not feel like stupid, like it's something you should have known before. I don't know if that makes sense. I just really like Dr. Perry's writing. Next, I want to make sure that I am reading at least one book of the month title every month. So this is the last challenge that I'm giving myself. So the book of the month title that I'm going to read in August is You're Invited by Amanda Jayatissa. I'm not really sure how to say that last name, but I don't really know much of anything about this book, but I have heard good things about it so far. And I think it kind of is going to have the guest list vibes. It's set in Sri Lanka, which I don't think I've ever read a book set in Sri Lanka, so I'm really excited. I hope it's atmospheric. I hope it's creepy wedding vibes. I hope it's everything that I wanted the guest list to be. But the guest list was fine for me. It was okay, but I have a feeling this might be better. We'll see. I also want to read The Club by Ellery Lloyd. This is another book that was recommended to me by one of my coworkers. A lot of my coworkers read, which is nice. They always give me some really good recommendations. But I actually bought this at a local bookstore when I was visiting Jackie. So I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about this. It seems like one of those rich people drama books, and it seems to be kind of like one of those exclusive celebrity clubs that is more than meets the eye. It's more than just a ritzy club for celebrities. So that's all I know. Next, I'm going to read Cruel Beautiful World by Carolyn Levitt. And this one I think has a little bit of like cultish type vibes. I think there's an age gap romance in here. I think it's a little bit historical fiction-y. I think it's based in the 70s, and it's also set in rural Pennsylvania, which isn't too far from where I live in Virginia. So I've heard a lot of good things about this book. Multiple of my friends here on BookTube have read it and enjoyed it. So I'm gonna read that one. I'm also going to read, finally, I feel like I'm the last person that has a TikTok account to read this book, but I'm gonna read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This book has blown up on TikTok recently, and I feel like I'm missing out. So I'm gonna read this one. I love the way this book feels in my hands. It's like nice and floppy. And again, borrowed this from one of my coworkers who learned about it from TikTok. And I don't really know much of anything about this. I think this has something to do with abusive relationships or escaping abusive relationships, but we'll see. I like Colleen Hoover's writing because they're pretty hard-hitting romances, and I've heard this one might be a tearjerker as well. Okay, so those are all of the already published books that I'm going to read, but let's talk about the arcs that I'm gonna read this month. So the first one I'm gonna read is The Lost Girls of Willowbrook, and I'm so excited for this one. It's written by Ellen Marie Wiseman, and I'm excited about this because it is about a institution for children with disabilities set in New York, and it has like creepy vibes. There's some abuse going on, there's some ghosts going on, I think, medical experiments. So it sounds right up my alley. I love reading anything about asylums, institutions, schools for children with disabilities. I do work in residential treatment for children with disabilities, and it's so interesting to me to see how far we've come from the 1970s and the practices that we used to do for individuals with disabilities to where we are now. And so I'm really interested in this. I'm so excited. This is probably the book that I'm most excited for in August. This has been compared to Girl Interrupted, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm just so excited. So excited. I really hope this one isn't disappointing because this will probably be the first book that I pick up in August. Okay, the last two books that I'm gonna read this month are going to be NetGalley arcs. So the first is going to be Stay Awake by Megan Golden, and I've enjoyed the other two books by Megan Golden that I've read, and this one has to do with memory loss and maybe a little bit of like time warp stuff. I think this woman wakes up and doesn't know really where she is, doesn't know what year it is. Somebody else is living in her apartment, and she finds a note with a bloody knife, and that's all I want to know. And then the last book that I want to read this month is The Blame Game by Sandy Jones. And Sandy Jones is a little bit hit or miss for me. I've enjoyed one of her books. I've felt very so-so about one of her books, and then I have soft DNF'd one of her books. So we'll see about this one. I think it has something to do with a therapist that becomes obsessed with her clients. So that sounds, again, right up my alley. And the cover of this one is beautiful. Okay, those are all of the books that I want to read in August. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anything, but if I do, it'll be in my wrap-up. Let me know if you've read any of these books that I've mentioned today. Please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out my channel, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.